Hi everyone, I know we've met a bit already, but I'm Jemima. I'm part of the supply chain here at ShelterBox, and this is my colleague Flora.
So I'm the program manager at ShelterBox.
So ShelterBox specialises in emergency relief shelter aid items. Here's a bit of a bio of us. We're going to be sharing slides at the end as well. One of the things we realised, and I'm sure many other organisations have realised as well, is that we have an impact on the environments of the communities that we support. Because of that, ShelterBox created these working groups. So we've got an environmental sustainability community of practice, which is essentially the overarching working group, which feeds into a number of different working groups. Flora and I are in the plastic reduction working group, which is what we're going to be talking to you about today. So the goal of our working group is to continue to find ways to eliminate pieces of packaging classified as problematic, which is something we'll be discussing in a moment, on our global and regional aid items through tendering and close collaboration with suppliers. There's a few objectives as well.
Great. So why do we have a plastics group? Well, Jemima touched on it a little bit, but obviously we're all quite aware of the impact of plastic on the environment. But we are specifically looking at this because of the packaging that surrounds our aid items and how that goes into communities. So we're really thinking about what is the sort of impact of that being sent to communities and those receiving those items, and what do they do with it? And there's some information here about what can happen to plastics in the environment of the communities that we support. Because of, I think Annette mentioned it, but because of lack of waste management systems, basically plastics can cause havoc in communities, flooding, can create waterborne diseases or breeding grounds for mosquitoes, or if it's burned, create air pollution. So there's lots of reasons why we want to remove that from our supply chain. And that's obviously just a general view, but specifically we've done research and communicated with partners and the community to find out what actually happens to the packaging which is going to communities. So you can see some PDM data here. This is from mosquito nets in Sudan, where we found that over 50% of people who received mosquito nets burnt the packaging, and over 15% left it on the ground. It's not really their fault. There's no waste management system, so we've got to think about what can we do so that they don't have to sort of do those things to manage the packaging that's ending up with them. And this is more anecdotal, but we work in Cameroon on Mineral Camp, and there's sort of evidence that there are no waste management systems. So everything that goes to that camp is going to stay there. So we really need to consider what we're doing to stop that from getting there in the first place.
So how do we begin to solve this problem? We'll be talking through in a moment our methodology, which is starting with us establishing our working group, moving all the way through to accountability and learning.
Great, so the first step we did was defining the problem, like really understanding what actually is the issue here. We looked at how the sector sort of defines what initially we were calling single-use plastic. But we found that a lot of these definitions were very based around sort of global north idea of what single-use plastic is and what impact it has. And so, yeah, we wanted to really look at what does it actually mean? What is the problem? And so we eventually came to this definition as a way to define what problem packaging is. So we defined it as problem packaging rather than single-use plastic. And the reason for that is to sort of take into account what people actually do with packaging. So we decided that problem packaging is when the materials are not essential for the protection of an aid item or for the safe delivery, storage or use of an aid item, won't be meaningfully repurposed by the community that receives them, or and may cause harm to the community or the environment. And this has been a useful definition for us to take to suppliers to explain what is it that we want to cut out of our supply chain.
So that leads us on to how we started to understand our aid items. We did a big process in 2021 of starting to map our global items, those are the items that are used most frequently. In 2022, we're now focusing on our regional items, but we essentially mapped all of the packaging down to sort of the straps to really understand what then out of that packaging fits into the problem packaging and then needs to be removed. one of the things we found really interesting and a part a little frustrating as well is, so primary and secondary packaging is something that we really feel we can get more of a tangible change made in terms of chatting to suppliers. Tertiary packaging, so that's your freight packaging, is something that we find is really difficult to change at the moment. And I think that's partly due to the fact that it's also in sort of the corporate sector, it's in the humanitarian sector, and it's quite standardized in general. So I guess maybe later on if we can have a discussion about what maybe could be done in terms of tertiary packaging, because I think it's something that we can't do on our own. It definitely has to be a more widely looked at concept.
Yeah, so the next step is actually listing the people that we're supporting. So we collect post-distribution monitoring data. We're also talking to partners and talking to people who are receiving our items and the packaging that comes with our items. So we've started to collect PDM data about specific packaging pieces so that we can understand them better. And there's a sort of number of reasons why we might collect data on a piece of packaging. So if we can't remove the item because maybe they are protecting an aid item, we want to understand maybe ways that that item or that packaging can be reused by a community, or is it reused by a community? We also want to ensure that it's not causing harm to the community. If we do want to remove it because we don't see it as essential for the sort of packaging of the aid item, then we want to collect evidence to persuade suppliers that it is reasonable to remove the item. And but we also understand if it's useful, we might not want to take out the system. So cardboard is a good example of often that is reused by communities. They might a cardboard box might be using a cardboard box or be using it for fuel. So it might be not essential to take it out of the system. Or if we just don't know anything about it and we want to find out more. And here's some examples of PDM data that we've got. Yes, so our initial findings from this data collection was actually that most wrapping and packaging is actually removed before the distribution of aid items. So it's actually not all of it is going to the community. So it's kind of could be stopping at the partner or at that distribution stage. That's really interesting because it might not mean that it's still got a good waste disposal, but it's actually might not be impacting that particular community. The second finding is that most affected communities have little access to waste management, which might not be a surprise to some of you. And yeah, a third finding is that lots of packaging is used in really resourceful ways, and that's why we want to understand what are people doing with it. So a good example is Ziploc bags, which solar lights come in or which nails come in. They can be reused for holding things like seeds, or just keeping nails and then keeping household items in them. So sometimes we might think that it's actually better to keep that packaging within our aid item. And here's just a case study from our response in Mozambique. We're partnering with CARE, and here's some sort of examples of a way that packaging has been reused. So that's some plastic strapping, which is tertiary packaging, which someone's used to read baskets with. This is also tertiary packaging, so it's the metal that goes around crates, and that's being reused as a chicken coop. And you can see this tarpaulin here. Our tarpaulins with big packs come in, sort of scrap tarpaulin, which wrapped around them, and that's the household would take it and use it as ground matting.
So I know we've got 2 minutes. By understanding our aid better and collecting PDM, we were able to identify, as I was saying before, the problem packaging. We then took this to the suppliers along with PDM data. So far, we've managed to remove, so this is our shelter toolkit. This had 6 pieces of LDPE plastic on it. We've removed all of them now. So if we think for one shelter kit, there's 6 pieces of plastic, we maybe distribute thousands of shelter toolkits. That's actually quite a considerable amount. Our jugs were all originally all individually wrapped in plastic. Those have also been removed. And so there's a bit of an example there. And I've got our fun plastics calculator, and to date we have removed, so in 2021, 250,000 pieces of plastic, which I know we still have a really long way to go, and I think we're very aware of that, especially as a working group. But it's something that we're sort of excited to see that suppliers are happy to make those changes if we can sort of give them the evidence to do so. So finally, some challenges and lessons learned. As we said before, primary and secondary packaging is something that we can really see we can start to make changes, and we have been making changes to. It's tertiary packaging that we really need support with, and that's something that maybe we can be more collaborative with across the sector. Involving suppliers from the beginning has been so key, particularly in 2021 when we're talking with our global supplier. I think that was part of making sure it was a collaborative working relationship really, really helped. Embedding sustainability into our strategic goals and making sure we have the backing from the whole organisation. This isn't just one group of people doing this, it needs to be embedded within the whole organisation. Cost was a really interesting one because so far to make those reductions, we haven't actually spent any money other than the staff time. So I think sometimes there's conversations around how much things might cost. Is it going to be more expensive? And I get if you're trying to change or innovate into a new type of item, that will have more costs. But actually, for us to reduce these, it didn't cost us apart from that staff time. And then taking in the PDM, so listening to the communities again is really important. And then connecting to others in the sector, which I do want to chat about.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if everyone is connected into this sort of area of the sector, but there is an joint initiative called the Joint Initiative for Sustainable Humanitarian Waste Packaging Waste Management. It's really catchy name, but it's actually doing a lot of work and bringing loads of people together to try and tackle this issue. So if you're interested in this sort of thing, I think it's a really good thing to get involved in. We've been involved in it, and it's great because you can get as involved as you like, and you can also get lots of information from them and be learning as well as getting involved. So yeah, I would recommend sort of getting into what's going on with that group.
I think that. Thank you so much.
I think we have time for some questions now, if anyone has any. Oh, yes.
Yeah, I was wondering how much conversations you've been having with the global shelter cluster. I think we should all just come together and have a big working group at a global level.
Yeah, that would be great. Definitely.
But
yeah, maybe we can catch up after. It'd be helpful to sort of know from your side as well how much maybe you've tapped into. I'm sure a lot into the joint initiative, and then maybe we can, if that's something else.